This is Made for More Living with Johnny Jennings, powered by eXp Realty. Online at madeformoreliving.com.
The Oakland A's are coming to Sacramento. Or are they? And then this is Johnny Jennings, and I was at Lake Tahoe this last weekend with Valerie, my lovely wife, and she is about to give birth to baby number 2. So baby number 2, baby Ben, is on the way, and so we wanted to just have like one last weekend before the chaos hits. And we were at a restaurant, and the restaurant was the Charter House. Have you ever been to the Charter House, Barry?
I have. That's a great place.
It's a great place. And I asked my dad that question. I was like, Pops, have you been to the Charter House? And he's like, yeah, I've been. I was like, have you been recently? He's like, that's such an underrated, like an overused term, recently. It's like, how long ago was it, Pops? It's like 35 years ago. I was like, okay, it's been a minute. You need to go back. But anyways, Val and I were sitting there at the Charter House, and we heard these two dudes talking, and they were talking about potentially the Oakland A's coming to Sacramento. And they were thinking, man, is that a good idea or is that a bad idea? Is that a good investment or is that a bad investment? Because will people show up? Will they be able to fill the stadiums and stuff if they do build a new stadium or bring the Oakland A's? What are your thoughts, Barry?
Well, I think it's all perspective, right? It's who's asking the question, who's answering the question, right?
Yeah.
So if you're talking to the owners of the River Cats, it's a great idea.
That's
right?
so true.
They are obviously overjoyed with the prospect of having a major team come to town and rent their facilities and really pay them big dividends. I think that's a great example. This show's mostly about real estate, but I think that's a great example how you never know. If you own the land, what's the saying? You build it, they'll come.
If you build it, they'll come. Field of dreams, yeah.
So I think that's a great idea from the River Cats perspective. How it works out for the Oakland A's, I don't know. But it gets them out of Oakland.
They're doing it mainly for the TV rights. If they lose the TV rights, they lose $70 million a year. So that's the strategy, is they just want to maintain those TV rights because Sacramento's still generally in the broadcast area.
Who's they for the TV rights?
The Oakland A's.
The owners of the A's,
owners
yeah.
of the team.
Oh.
They need to maintain those TV rights. So they want to stay in the vicinity. So they could probably move to Vegas and rent out some dinky little ball field, but they need to stay in the area in order to keep those.
Well, I remember spending the night in Oakland in front of the Navy base because I couldn't get on base yet because my truck wasn't licensed for the base. Mm-hmm. All my earthly possessions in the back of the pickup truck, and I'm telling you, that was one sleepless night.
Oh my gosh.
If I have to choose Oakland for Sacramento, I'm coming to Sacramento every day of the week.
Well, it's sad because the Warriors left, right? And who else left? The Raiders left. And so they're going to be without a sports team.
Who else? Just some little team.
Speaking of my dad, that's his favorite football team.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
The Raiders?
Yeah. Well, what was the quarterback there for a while? Derek Carr?
Yeah.
Derek Carr. So Derek Carr went to Bakersfield, and that's where Valerie's from, is from Bakersfield, went to the same high school. And I guess they call it like Derek Carr Stadium or something like that. Like he's a celebrity down in.
But it's interesting how up in value the Raiders franchise has become just moving from Oakland to Vegas.
That's true. That's true.
So what will become of the Oakland A's? They're not worth a whole lot compared to the other teams in baseball. What's going to happen when they move to Vegas?
Not as much as if they move to Sacramento.
If they move to Sacramento, they'll stay true and blue.
Yep. But speaking of investments, we have Barry Mathis with us today. He is a real estate broker extraordinaire, and he actually runs a property management company. Barry, you mind giving us like 2 seconds on your bio?
I've been doing real estate in the local area for about 22 years. I hang a license with eXp for sales, and then I started my own property management company. This is actually the second property management company I've started. And, I really enjoy investment real estate. I enjoy working with people, especially first-time investors, and helping them make that switch. And so I think that's kind of my story. Is now we manage about 200 properties, so we're big enough to get the job done and small enough to care whether we get it done.
And this is your second time around.
It is. I tell everybody I actually learned more shutting down the last company and selling it than I did running it. It's amazing how when you go to sell something, all the pieces come to play, and the things that you might have been missing, you learned about, but from the people that are trying to buy it, and then the things that maybe you would do differently the next time, you learn as well. So actually looking backwards now, I didn't want to sell it when I sold it, but when I sold it, I made good money on it. And looking backwards now, it's probably the best thing I ever did, is because I learned more about the business selling it than I did really running it.
That's interesting. So like Valerie, when we got started in real estate, we were in a little town in the middle of nowhere, and we had we were self-managing our properties, and we realized, hey, there's not really like a good solution to that in this community, and so why don't we start our own? And so our broker was kind enough to let us start that. And I think Valerie got it up to almost 50 doors within her first year. But this was like not like a Beverly Hills or a Granite Bay type of a community. It was very, very poor. And so Valerie swore she would never go back, because she remembers walking into units, and she walks in, and then all of a sudden, like just cockroaches just falling like rain on her.
Wow.
And so it was just like nasty. And she's like, I am never doing this again. And it's just funny to hear her perspective, and then hear you go, yeah, I'm going to do this again, and I'm going to grow it to 200 doors in a year.
Yeah. So, your wife is amazing. So that's just all I got to say. She handles everything with such grace and aplomb. Like, you can never tell that she's bothered, even when she's bothered. At least I can't. I'm sure you can.
Oh, I can.
Yeah, I'm sure you can.
It is painfully obvious to me.
Painfully obvious.
Yep. But speaking of property management, we get this question all the time from people who are looking to buy an investment property. They're like, should I self-manage or should I use a property manager? Now, obviously, you have a bias on this, but what are some pros and cons of each of those?
Well, I would say you might be surprised by my answer, because anyone can do what I do. Mm-hmm. But the biggest thing is I'm not them.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is, you ever go to buy a car and you wind up negotiating with the mystery manager in the back of the shop?
Yep.
Well, that's the same thing here. People treat the relationship between landlord and tenant differently if I'm involved. And it's not that I'm so much smarter, although what I learned doing 200 or 300 doors in a year might be carried over to protect you as well, right? Yeah. So I might know more because I do more, right? However, the biggest thing is I'm not you. And so they always, if the tenants can get to the landlord, then they always have this thought where I can influence his decision making. I can tell him I'll be a little late this month. I can tell him that I need to fix this. I can play on his strengths or weaknesses as I wish, right? And so some tenants will wind up playing the owner. And when people get me involved in the conversation, they realize that those games are over.
Yep.
Right? So they know that I'm going to do it by the book, not because I'm so much better, but because it's my job to do it by the book. Yep. Right? So my job says I need to do this, 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 and this. I'm not going to be upset about it. I'm just going to do it. Within reason, we do have some mercy, and we do go to owners with certain requests that we feel are reasonable. But for the most part, you're not getting away with changing the owner's mind on what they should be doing.
It's that degree of separation.
It is. Like right now, I'm going through like I started about a year ago with this company. And so right now I have a lot of renewals going on. And the owners, in many cases, would not raise rents, right? But when they have a manager giving them advice, I'm looking up what the rents have done. I'm pulling a rent comp for them and telling them, hey, you might not want to raise rents, but you're under market, right? And so you need to come up to market in order to, so we might not raise it as much as we could, but we might raise it like 5%.
You hit on an interesting topic too, like raising rents. Like, what has recent laws and stuff in Sacramento specifically, like how has that impacted your business in terms of rent control?
It had, as I think I don't know what your listenership is, but I'm fairly conservative, and I think you're going to find that most laws enacted by government sometimes have unintended consequences. And this particular law, we're referring to AB 1482, the TPA, came in and set limits on rent, which is basically a form of rent control. And invariably, wherever rent control happens, it fails. Or it has the opposite effect. And in this case, that's what it did. It had the opposite effect. So right now, I believe that the rent is 9.2% based on a combination of the 5% over the GCI for the local region. And what happens is every owner wants to raise it 9.2%. Whereas
that's the max you can limit. You can raise it now.
They want to raise it to the max. And without that being there, they probably wouldn't have raised it to the max. So in reality, we've now had several years of owners saying, I don't know what the government's going to do next, so I need to raise this as much as I can every time I can. And so instead of rents just slowly creeping up, we've seen rents go across the board almost to the max allowable every time it comes up for renewal. So this law, I understand why they got the law. I understand they're wanting to, protect people and let them live in certain areas in the area they grew up in without rent taking over. I get that, and I have sympathy for that. But I think that some of the people designing the laws should look at that and see what's been the actual effect. Now that this law has been around for a little while, what happened to rent increases? Did they go up as they did before, or did they basically get supercharged? And I think that's what happened. Rents have gone up an incredible amount. I'm in this business every day, and I am shocked sometimes at how much we can get for rent.
And so you think rent control is what caused the increase in rents? You don't think the market caused the increase in rents?
I think that the presence of rent control guaranteed the increase in rents. Yeah, I guaranteed it. As of right now, you should be seeing some pullback on rents. But in reality, those owners are still being able to climb up as much as they're allowed to do. And until the demand catches up with that supply, then you're going to continue to see those increases go up as high as they can go.
Because that's essentially, for the renter, it's their home. For the landlord, it's their investment. And so they're wanting to maximize and hedge against potential downsides and downturns in the market, right?
Yes, and what we're seeing, in some cases, they're dividing the laws up to where it affects the big corporations, but doesn't affect the small mom and pop investor. And in those cases, that makes sense, I think, to some degree, although you're seeing in New York City right now where it's completely backfired, where property values are lowering and lowering and lowering. Part of that is due to the interest rate increase, but the other part is they can't get out of their big apartment buildings the returns that they should be able to get because they can't raise rents. And it's actually, if you look at the New York market, it's just a terrible thing that's going on. You're seeing billions of dollars worth of value evaporate because those apartment owners are not able to raise the rents to market rates.
Wow. Well, hey, when we come back, we'll be talking with Barry Mathis about 5 different returns on investment that you can have when you own an investment property.
Yeah, so if you're thinking about putting your home on the market and you're wondering who's the best in Northern California, who's the best in this area, who has the most 5-star Google reviews, who's getting multiple offers for their clients, who's getting cash offers, who's moving the fastest, who's going to get me the most for my property, it's none other than our friend Johnny Jennings with Made for More Living. You can find him online at made4living.com. made4living.com. You can trust him. He's a great guy. And hey, if you're a realtor, whether you're experienced or new to the industry, they'd love to have you on their team. Reach out again at made4moreliving.com. made4living.com.